Hello and welcome. Namaste from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India and New Zealand conclude a free trade agreement. The agreement stands out as one of India's fastest concluded FTAs. ASEAN foreign ministers meet in Malaysia for talks aimed at halting border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia. Thailand says Cambodia agrees to border talks after ASEAN meet. And Japan prepares to restart the world's biggest nuclear plant. Japanese Regional Assembly backs plan to restart Kashiwazaki Kariba plant nearly 15 years after Fukushima disaster. Also, minority leaders protest in Bangladesh against the Yunus government for failing to curb violence. Demand proper investigation into Deepu Das's killing. Journalists too protest attacks on major dailies. First, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a telephonic conversation with Prime Minister of New Zealand, Christopher Luxon, on Monday. The two leaders jointly announced the successful conclusion of the historic, ambitious and mutually beneficial India-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement. The leaders agreed that the FTA would serve as a catalyst for green trade, investment, innovation and shared opportunities between both the nations. The leaders also welcomed progress in other areas of bilateral cooperation, including defence, sports, education and people-to-people ties. This is India's 7th FTA in the last few years after Oman, United Kingdom, EFTA countries, the UAE, Australia and Mauritius. The FTA would significantly deepen bilateral economic engagement, enhance market access, promote investment flows, strengthen strategic cooperation between the two countries and also open up new opportunities for investors, entrepreneurs, farmers, MSMEs, students and youth of both the countries across various sectors. With the strong and credible foundation provided by the pact, both the leaders expressed confidence in doubling bilateral trade over the next 5 years, as well as an investment of $20 billion in India from New Zealand over the next 15 years. New Zealand's Prime Minister in a social media post said, and I quote, "I have just spoken with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi following the conclusion of the New Zealand-India Free Trade Agreement. The FTA reduces or removes tariffs on 95% of our exports to India. It's forecast that New Zealand exports to India could increase from $1.1 billion to $1.3 billion per year over the coming 2 decades. Boosting trade means more Kiwi jobs, higher wages and more opportunities for hard-working New Zealanders. The agreement builds on the strong friendship between our two countries. India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and this gives Kiwi businesses access to 1.4 billion Indian consumers. Our government is relentlessly focused on fixing the basics and building the future, with new trade deals like this helping to grow our economy as all Kiwis can get ahead." End quote. And speaking to the media after the conclusion of the pact with New Zealand, India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal said that under the landmark agreement, New Zealand will invest $20 billion in India over the span of 15 years.
$20 billion, we must see in the context of the size of the New Zealand economy. So far, in the last 25 years, New Zealand has only invested $70 million. So they are committing to invest now 1,80,000 crores. So from 630 crore investment over 25 years, New Zealand has committed to invest 1,80,000 crores in the next 15 years. When you see this in context, you recognize what a big gain it is for India. This will open up, as I said, collaboration in several sectors, particularly benefiting our farmers, our dairy and our MSMEs.
Further, the Commerce Minister added that this FTA turns ties with New Zealand from friendly to formidable, especially for trade and innovation.
This is the 7th free trade agreement all of them with developed economies with significantly larger per capita incomes than India, demonstrating that we are expanding trade relations rapidly with countries who complement the Indian economy rather than compete with India. The FTA turns New Zealand ties from friendly to formidable, especially for trade, innovation and youth-driven growth.
And India's neighborhood, leaders of minority organizations in Bangladesh have accused the Yunus-led interim government of failing to stop violence, killings and persecution targeting religious and ethnic minorities, warning of growing insecurity and impunity across the country. The allegations were made on Monday during a human chain organized by the Minority Unity Front in front of the National Press Club in Dhaka. Leaders of the Bangladesh Hindu Bauddha Christian Oikea Parishad said Hindus, Buddhists, Christians and indigenous communities are all living in extreme insecurity, accusing law enforcement agencies of remaining passive in the face of repeated attacks. They also raised concerns over attacks on media houses and cultural institutions, including Pratham Alo, the Daily Star and others. Protesters demanded a proper investigation into Deepu Das's killing and accountability for those responsible, warning that continued inaction could further endanger minority communities. And the Editors' Council of Bangladesh's president and a New Age editor Nurul Kabir has alleged that either a section of the interim government or the government as a whole allowed the coordinated attacks and arson at the offices of Pratham Alo and the Daily Star on the night of the 18th of December. Speaking on Channel 24 talk show Muktabak on Sunday night, Kabir said that despite repeated calls and messages to senior advisors and government officials during the attacks, authorities failed to act decisively to prevent the violence or ensure timely rescue operations. He said assurances were given, but by then the fire had already spread through multiple floors while journalists remained trapped inside. At a joint protest rally organized by the Editors' Council and the Newspaper Owners Association of Bangladesh, that's the NOAB, BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir said the violence was not just against two newspapers, but an assault on democracy itself. Leaders from political parties, civil society, business groups and cultural organizations joined the protest and formed a human chain demanding accountability. The coordinated arson and vandalism of Bangladesh's two leading newspapers have been widely described as a black day for the country's media, raising serious questions about press freedom, public safety and the state's willingness or ability to protect democratic institutions. And in an email interview with the Asian News International, former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has addressed the spiraling of violence in Bangladesh, which included the lynching of a Hindu man, and has enlisted deep concern from India, especially in the light of recent threats by radical groups to Indian missions in the country. Former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina sharply criticized the Mohammad Yunus-led interim government for straining bilateral ties with India. She asserted that the current tensions are entirely Yunus's making, as his administration issues hostile statements against India, fails to protect religious minorities and allows extremists to dictate foreign policy. Hasina highlighted that India's decades-long role as Bangladesh's steadfast partner, emphasizing that deep fundamental ties will outlast any temporary government. She accused Yunus of emboldening extremists who attacked Indian missions, placing them in power, releasing terrorists and granting immunity to hooligans. Warning of multiplied lawlessness, minority persecution and eroded credibility under Yunus, Hasina expressed confidence that legitimate governance will restore the sensible 15-year partnership. Japan has taken a major step towards reviving nuclear power more than a decade after the Fukushima disaster. A regional assembly in Niigata Prefecture has backed a plan to restart the Kashiwazaki Kariwa nuclear power plant, marking its first move towards operation since 2011. The vote follows approval last month by Niigata Governor Hideo Hanazumi, clearing a key local hurdle for the restart. The plant was shut down after a massive earthquake and tsunami triggered nuclear meltdowns at Fukushima, prompting Japan to suspend atomic power generation nationwide. Australia's New South Wales State Parliament was recalled on Monday to vote on proposed new laws which would impose major curbs on firearm ownership, while new court documents detailed the Bondi Beach terror attack. Sajid and Naveed Akram allegedly planned the attack for months. They surveilled the site and carried weapons and explosives. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has apologized to the nation and has taken responsibility for the atrocity that shook the nation.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese apologized to the country's Jewish community and called for bipartisan support as he pushes for new laws against hate speech and extremism. Tens of thousands, including Australian Prime Minister and other leaders, attended the heavily guarded main memorial event in New South Wales.
As Prime Minister, I feel the weight of responsibility for an atrocity that happened whilst I'm Prime Minister. And I'm sorry for what the Jewish community and our nation as a whole has experienced. The government will work every day to protect Jewish Australians, to protect the fundamental right as Australians that they have to be proud of who they are, to practice their faith, to educate their children, and to engage in Australian society in the fullest way possible.
The Parliament of Australia's New South Wales state was recalled on Monday to vote on proposed new laws that would impose major curbs on firearm ownership following the mass shooting on Sydney's Bondi Beach last week. The new rules will cap the number of guns an individual can own to 4 or 10 for exempted individuals like farmers. The legislation would also ban the display of terrorist symbols. Authorities will also be able to prohibit protests for up to 3 months following a terrorism incident.
We're introducing new laws, tough new laws, to protect the community, to crack down on hate and strengthen public safety. The legislation bans the public displays of terrorist symbols, outlaws violence, incitement to violence in New South Wales, and gives police stronger powers during public assemblies.
Removing guns from our street makes our streets safer. We have more than 1.1 million guns in our state. And reducing the number of those, particularly for rec shooters, I think is reasonable.
Meanwhile, court documents released on Monday have revealed that the suspect, Naveed Akram, conducted firearm training in an area of New South Wales outside of Sydney with his father. Akram has been transferred from the hospital to jail. He's facing multiple charges, including terrorism and 15 murders. Anamika's report for DD India.
Southeast Asian foreign ministers held a meeting in Malaysia on Monday seeking to end border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia, which have killed at least 40 people and displaced more than 500,000 this month. Both the ASEAN members, Thailand and Cambodia, agreed to hold talks on the 24th of this month. Defense officials from both the countries will meet to discuss the possibility of resuming a ceasefire. The two countries agreed to hold talks using their General Border Committee, an established bilateral mechanism, with Thailand proposing that it takes place at the border line in the Thai province of Chanthaburi. Foreign Minister Sihasak Phuangketkeow told a briefing in Kuala Lumpur, but soon after Cambodia said Thailand launched airstrikes on its territory on Monday, the day the ceasefire talks were announced that they will be resuming.
The meeting is scheduled, and this is proposed by the Cambodian side, on the 24th of December. So we will be working towards, and this time, let's thrash out the details, make sure that the ceasefire reflects the situation on the ground, and the ceasefire is one that really holds, and both sides are going to fully respect the ceasefire.
And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. French President Emmanuel Macron attends military drills in Abu Dhabi. Russian general killed in a car bomb explosion in Moscow.
geopolitics and trade deals, economic challenges amid development, hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I am Gautam Roy. Now, Russia's investigative committee has confirmed that a Russian general was killed in a car bomb blast in Moscow on Monday. Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov, head of the Russian General Staff's Army Operational Training Directorate, was killed, the committee said, adding that one line of investigation is that the bomb was planted by Ukrainian special services. Talks held between US, European and Ukrainian officials over the last 3 days in Florida aimed at ending the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff called those meetings and separate talks with Russian negotiators productive and focused on a shared strategic approach between Ukraine and the United States as well as Europe. The meetings in Miami were the latest in a series of talks between the US, Russia and Ukraine on a US drafted 20-point plan to end the conflict. Witkoff said the US-Ukraine meeting focused on 4 key points: further development of the 20-point plan, a multilateral security guarantee framework, a US security guarantee framework for Ukraine, and further development on economics and prosperity to rebuild Ukraine. However, Russia has said that the talks that took place in Florida have made slow progress. French President Emmanuel Macron is visiting the United Arab Emirates to celebrate Christmas with French forces stationed in the country and reinforcing bilateral ties with the Gulf state. During his trip, Macron, accompanied by French Defense Minister Catherine Vautrin, attended military drills at the 5th Cavalry Regiment Training Center. The visit highlights France's commitment to supporting its troops abroad while also strengthening its strategic partnership with the UAE. Dozens of farmers blocked the A2/E19 highway on the French-Belgian border on Sunday night to protest against the government's policy of mass cattle culling. Farmers are resisting the government's mass culling policy, staging a standoff over plans to slaughter cows to curb the spread of nodular dermatitis, commonly known as lumpy skin disease. At a conference in New Delhi on Monday, Niti Aayog released a report on the internationalization of higher education in India. According to the report, only 3% of India's students go abroad for higher education, while 97% study within Indian higher education institutions. According to the 2024 data, over 1.3 million Indian students are pursuing higher education abroad, with Canada, the US, UK and Australia being the most popular destinations. The report also notes that around 50,000 foreign students studied in India in 2021-22, with 1/3 coming from Nepal. The National Education Policy 2020 highlighted the internationalization of Indian higher education, allowing top global universities to open campuses in the country. Also at the conference, Niti Aayog Vice Chairperson Suman Berry said that the report stresses collaboration between universities and the government, with public-private partnerships playing a key role.
Report carefully, I looked at it in contributing a message about where the responsibility lies and really how the institutions and government need to work together, because I think this needs to fit into the business plans of individual universities, particularly those in the private sector, and I think Pramath is probably representing that group, but it must take place in a facilitating framework, and I think we're not used to thinking of PPPs as a model, but that is the kind of model that we are going to have to aim for.
Kashmir has been formally connected to India's national freight rail network with the arrival of its first ever food grain freight train at the Anantnag Goods Terminal in South Kashmir. Operated by Indian Railways for the Food Corporation of India, the train carried over 1,380 tons of rice in 21 wagons, travelling uninterrupted from Ajitwar railway station to Anantnag. Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha hailed the movement as the fulfillment of a long-standing goal, saying the new link will strengthen food security and improve logistics resilience in the valley. Northern Railways said the rail connection will ensure a more reliable and cost-effective supply of food grains, particularly to remote areas, while reducing dependence on road transport. Union Minister for Environment, Forests and Climate Change Bhupendra Yadav has addressed a press conference on the Aravalli Conservation Framework on Monday. Clarifying the Supreme Court's observations, the minister said the ruling recognizes and endorses the Government of India's sustained efforts to protect the Aravalli Range through scientific assessment, strict safeguards and initiatives such as the Aravalli Green Wall project.
In recognition of the ecological importance of the Aravalli Range, the MOEF and CC has also launched the Aravalli Green Wall project, an initiative aimed at restoring degraded land, preventing desertification, enhancing green cover and improving the ecological health of Aravalli landscape. So this is the first time that the green movement of the government is also recognized.
India's push towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India in defence and internal security, received a fresh boost today as the Defence Research and Development Organisation, or DRDO, and Rashtriya Raksha University signed a memorandum of understanding to strengthen collaboration in research, education, training and technology support. The MOU was signed at South Block in New Delhi in the presence of Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, marking a significant step towards building indigenous capabilities for defence and internal security during Amrit Kal. Partnership brings together DRDO's cutting-edge technological expertise and Rashtriya Raksha University's academic and policy strength in internal security. The collaboration will focus on joint research projects, PhD and fellowship programs, specialized training for security forces and studies on emerging operational challenges. The initiative is expected to enhance technology preparedness, support life cycle management of DRDO developed systems for security forces and reinforce India's strategic autonomy through a whole-of-nation approach. Let's now talk a bit about sports. Well, New Zealand crushed West Indies by 323 runs on Monday to win the third test at Mount Maunganui and seal a 2-0 series victory. Jacob Duffy's 5-wicket haul proved crucial to the win. The host side set a target of 462 and bowled out the touring side for a paltry 138. Duffy finished with 5 for 42, backed by Ejaz Patel, who claimed 3 for 23, while opener Brandon King top scored for West Indies with 67. New Zealand's Devon Conway scored 227 and 100 in 2 innings, while captain Tom Latham scored 137 and 101, the first opening pair in first-class cricket history to score twin centuries in the same match. So New Zealand's Tom Latham and Devon Conway became the first openers in Test cricket to score centuries in both the innings. Latham scored 137 and 101 in the third and final test of the series, while Conway added to his 227 in the first innings with a 100 in the second. The pair had put on 323 in the first innings and combined for 515 runs overall, which is a record for an opening pair's total in a Test match. Conway also became the 10th batter in Test history to score a double 100 and 100 in the same match. He followed Greg Chappell, Sunil Gavaskar, Shubman Gill, Graham Gooch, Magnus Labuschagne, Brian Lara, Lawrence Rowe, Kumar Sangakkara and Doug Walters in achieving that feat. Now, Morocco got their Africa Cup of Nations bid off to a winning start by beating Comoros 2-0 in the tournament's opening game on Monday. Brahim Diaz and Ayoub Al-Kabi scored second-half goals for the host nation. Morocco squandered an early penalty and were goalless at half-time despite dominating possession. The Atlas Lions broke the deadlock in the 55th minute when Diaz scored the opening goal. In the 74th minute, El-Kabi scored a trademark bicycle kick to double the lead and ease tension and seal the match. Morocco extended their record-breaking run of successive victories by a national team to 19. In October, they went past the previous best of 15 set by Spain from 2008 to 2009. That's all we have for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. Just scan the QR code on the screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Up next is my colleague Mark Lynn with a special on the India-New Zealand FTA. Stay tuned.